Ultima!
The state of that thing.
And welcome back to yet another episode of the Northern Rider podcast. I am the Northern Rider, and today I have absolutely zero guests because I am the most disorganized person that you'll ever come across. Sometimes, anyways. I want to talk to you guys today about something that is near and dear to my heart. That is the cold weather. I absolutely love the cold weather. I love the winter. I honestly think it's the best season. Maybe it's not so much for riding because it does get wet, sloppy, things like that, but you know, these things happen. However, since the winter weather is closing in and it is kind of, if you look outside, I'm sure you can see a few of the leaves turning to brown now. It's becoming to that part of the season. And with winter approaching, why not talk about ways in which you guys can prepare yourselves to get ready for the cold weather and to have a look at, see if you can set up your bike in a different way or to kind of set yourself up with different items of clothing. Now, oftentimes when I'm out riding in the cold weather, I like to kind of put layers on. Layering is a really good way of providing yourself warmth, but it also gives you that extra sort of addition to be able to take layers off if you get too hot. So when doing exercise, the body will heat up, as you well know. I overheat quite a lot and tend to not want to wear very much. But starting off with no layers to putting layers on later on can be an option, and also vice versa. However, if you are cold to start with, then it can be more difficult to get going and get that motivation in the hills or in the downhill sections or wherever you're going to ride. That being said, looking at things like jackets and gloves and things like this, like a lot of these things can help. I like to kind of go for a nice basic setup. I like to wear the longer sort of cycling trousers. I like to have things like maybe something that's got like the padded sections in them as well, and something that like maybe is what the road cyclists will wear. If I'm riding around my local area or things like that, then that does just fine. However, things like if you're going to do downhill or if you're going to be doing something on the trails, you'll want something that maybe can give you a little bit more flexibility and something that can afford for you to have things like knee pads on or shin pads, etc. So I often kind of look around on the internet and to see what's kind of appearing here and there, and I often find that going on to kind of like your cycle websites like for example Wiggle or other places like Chain Reaction are good places to start, but Amazon is often overlooked as well. Often things can be kind of approached with a kind of it's cheap, it must be crap kind of attitude, and I think sometimes it in that aspect it does get overlooked. But I bought things from Amazon before and it turned out to be really, really good stuff. I've bought bib shorts, I've bought things like that, which kind of aid in your comfort levels quite a lot. And it's not let me down yet. So, winter, what do we look at for winter as well? Like, because oftentimes we'll go like, I'm going to put my jacket on, things like that. But we're looking at other things as well, like, for example, like the bike. Now, what can you do to change your bike for winter? I'll be honest with you, I'll probably keep my bike the same. I probably won't change much, to be honest with you. However, like I am looking at the different oils that I'm using on the bike at the moment as well. Things like that. That could have a massive effect because it does tend to be a little bit drier in the summer months and a little bit more wetter during the winter months as well. So changing your lube on your bike, that could be something as well. That could be something that you might want to look at. Do a little bit of research, have a look through different forums or websites, YouTube, and see what might fit your bike best. So things like tires as well, like tires can make a massive difference depending on terrain that you're going on, and also other things that might come into a factor. For example, if you're like me, I've often used to ride a bike with low tire pressure in the snow and to get from point A to point B in a village that I used to live in. That did me really well, and often riding in the snow can be a hell of a lot of fun. I went down a downhill track on a hardtail with just kind of 26-inch tires, and it was like lowered pressure, and it was such a good laugh. Like, I've never stopped laughing like on that day. It was really good fun. But changing your tires can make a massive difference to like your commute to work. If you use your bike to work, excuse me, if you use your bike to work, then you can look at things like maybe slicker tires or something that's going to grip a little bit more, depending on your route that you go. I mean, for the most part, my cycle to work is usually just to go onto a path or a road, and that's usually quite fine. And there's a few obstacles along the way once it gets really deep into winter. For example, black ice. I mean, not a lot can help you there in that aspect. I've once slid down an entire hill on my backside just because of black ice. So be careful for that. That's one thing I would say. But, you know, learning different techniques as well for riding on ice or snow and things like that, that's something that you can only kind of practice with like time when it gets there. You know, if you're used to that, then, you know, obviously you might have your own little techniques. But combining like techniques of, you know, maybe feathering the brake a little bit more, or kind of just taking a different route and combining that with different gear, for example tires, that may help, you know, have your commute or your local ride be a little bit more enjoyable in the winter months, instead of kind of sliding all over the place and kind of not really enjoying it. And gloves are a main thing. I've used a plethora of gloves over the years. Being a ski instructor, I've often thought about different materials and what works best for me. I find that leather with a fleece lining is a really, really good form for a glove, but that's just for skiing essentially. I found like neoprene is a really good insulator that keeps your hands nice and warm until they get wet. There's lots of different materials out there, so you want to pick something that, you know, will keep your hands warm and dry. So I found a company a long time ago, and I used their products when they were being tested in the British Army as well, at Sealskins. Sealskins are a company which is, I believe, is based in the UK, and they make completely waterproof products, and they are like materials which you wouldn't think was waterproof. So they do waterproof socks, gloves, I think they do a few other products as well. But for the most part, everything that they do is absolutely fantastic. I've used them before, I've sold the products before, I've been a fond user of them well before. I got really interested in brands and how different brands work and this, that, the other. Like, I got given some and didn't stop using them really. There's a pair of waterproof socks. So I know that their gloves work well. I've used them as well, and they have various options. They do have non-waterproof options as well, but the majority of their stuff is all waterproof, hence the name Sealskins. But they are a really good product. Highly recommend them, especially for when you're riding your bikes. They do also, I believe, have luminous style gloves as well. So if you want to be really visible in the dark nights, then I would highly recommend that. Washing your bike. I know sometimes people can be looking at a bike and saying, I really don't want to wash that bike. I really can't be bothered. I would recommend this a little bit more during the winter period as well. The reasons being is, during the winter seasons, there is a lot of salt that gets thrown around on the roads, and there seems to be a lot more salt kind of floating around in general during the winter periods. This can really affect your bike. It can affect the oils on your chain, on your gears. It can affect oil getting it can affect the salt getting into your forks, your suspension, things like this. It can really mess up stuff if it's left for a long period of time. Make the effort, get your bike clean, and use products to keep it clean and to keep it protected during the winter months. I'm sure Muc-Off and other brands like Interflon and other companies will do something which will protect you against the salt and protect you against the winter season as well. It's important to do so because the last thing you want is your bike to kind of pack up in the middle of winter. You want to keep riding if you're as keen as I am. Another thing as well is jackets. Jackets are a really kind of, I would say, an important feature. I would say it's probably the more important because during the winter period, believe it or not, like your body needs to consume a lot more water than it does in the summer months. So during the cold snaps, your body needs to warm up, so therefore it uses more energy than it would do to cool you down. So it needs to consume more water, more electrolytes, and that sort of good stuff. So think about that when you're on your rides as well. Also, if you have water bladders, things like this, you can get insulated ones if you're going into a really cold season. But if it's just general kind of coldness, then you'll have a standard water bladder which will kind of carry your water and it won't be of any problems at all. I've never had any problems with mine. Continuing with jackets, you need to keep warm and to keep your core temperature warm, which means that the more water that you're producing as well, the more water that you need to keep going, and you need to be able to have a good core temperature. Now, wearing a jacket won't mean that you have to drink less water, but it will mean that your body's not working as hard to keep you warm. There are various options out on the internet at the moment. There is various brands which are out there. Now, there's a few options to go down here. Do you go for a cheap and cheerful one that's going to keep you warm, do the job, or are you going to spend a little bit more money on something that, if it was to get ruined, then you'd be, a little bit disappointed because you spent so much money on it. However, it does the job exceptionally well. There is a few options here. So I am a great believer in buying brands which, yes, they'll cost a bit of money, but I'm always in the camp of you pay for what you get. It doesn't always work. There is some top-end brands which might not necessarily work. And it's not to say that every high-end brand is exceptional and will work every time, 100% of the time. At the end of the day, problems can occur. So, for example, working in the outdoor world, like brands like Rab, or you've got Arc'teryx, Berghaus, various other different brands are in fact incredibly good for keeping you warm in these colder environments. Often cycling companies will make something that's purely for cycling, and it might not do the job of keeping you warm or as warm. It might not be as good. The technology might be slightly different in what they use. So it's worth looking at outdoor brands as well to kind of keep an open opinion or an open mind on what is available to you. For example, there is a jacket called the Kinetic Jacket. I believe that is from Rab, I think. And that is a waterproof jacket which is stretched. So it's a stretchy material, and it is a really nice lightweight jacket which you can fold up into practically nothing, and it's reasonably warm. Wearing a layer with that, and like an under layer, like a base layer, then if you have a nice thermal layer on top, and with that jacket layering up, as I said before, is a really good way to go. It's great for cycling because at that point you can move your arms around and you've got that freedom of movement, whereas some jackets, if it's Gore-Tex, for example, It's a very straight cut material. It's kind of very restricting sometimes. So you want that maneuverability within a jacket, which is really, really good. So what is what other things would you want to look for, really? I mean, I tend to try and carry as little as possible on my rides as possible these days. So I like to have a little snack in case I need it, in case I kind of hit the wall and I'm just like, I haven't got any energy. I try to carry an inner tube, a tire levers, a pump, and a multi-tool, which is good for kind of most bits of maintenance or adjustments on the ride. If you ride tubes, make sure that you get the correct inner tubes and make sure you carry a spare one. Or if you are tubeless, just carry one tube anyway. It's always worthwhile, especially in the colder months. If you get caught and you have to walk back home, it's not going to be very pleasant at all. You want to be able to keep riding and keep warm as well. So make sure that you have an inner tube with you. Make sure you get the correct one. Make sure you get the correct valve as well, which I've mistakenly done before. As I said before, multi-tool, things like that. That's always good to carry. Park Tools do one for around about $8.99. You can get a Brand X one, chain reaction cycles for about £5. They vary. Some have like hex wrenches. All hex wrenches. Some have chain splitters on them. Some you can take to pieces and you can split them up, or some you can put into certain parts of the bike. You can put some in your into the top tube, and not the top tube, into your stem. There's little things like that. If you look at things like I think Seth's Bike Hacks, he had quite a few videos on cool little multi-tools and things like this. They're quite an option. If you're not interested in storing things inside the bike or wearing things, if you want to put it on the bike, I mean, you can have, like, for example, there's Top Peak. They do it's called the Aero Wedge. It's like a small saddlebag, things like that. Saddlebags are pretty cool. You can put them underneath your saddle, or you can put them on a top tube. You can store things in there that you don't want to carry like on your person. If you're more interested in keeping everything off you, then that's another good option to do. Or you can go for the smaller backpacks if you're interested in those, or hip packs as well. They are really good options to store things, and also if you want during the winter seasons as well. I know there are many people out there who suffer from things like Raynaud's, things like that. It's always worthwhile carrying. If you need little heat packs that you can get from, like, I think they're for like 99p or something like that, and you just split them, you just twist them a little bit, and just causes a chemical reaction inside and it heats up. You can put them in your gloves, in your shoes, things like that. So that's another option. Just while we're on about Raynaud's as well, for those who are suffering with that and tend not to go out because their hands get cold because of it, there are options to get heated. I'm not too sure if it's just your hands. I think it might be other parts as well, but I know that I've had a few customers before who have Raynaud's disease with their hands, and they have basically been able to get heated gloves, which are like USB powered, or you plug them in to a source and it charges them, and you have battery powered, and they are a little bit chunky, so bear that in mind. I don't think there is many that are quite heavy, or quite thin. I think the majority of them are quite a chunky glove. But if you do suffer from Raynaud's, it is worthwhile looking at that as well, just to give you that extra sort of bit of ammunition against the cold weather. Continuing with the theme of that as well, things like buffs, they are really, really good. Balaclavas, you can get like thin neoprene or sort of similar material ones, which are really good, especially if you sweat a lot as well. Like things like neoprene can like maybe reduce the sweat that goes to your body. It takes it out, so that it's not keeping you like cool on those colder rides. I know during the winter seasons it gets a bit muddy and it gets a bit disgusting out there. I know nearly every one of you will have these on your bikes, things like ass savers, rear mud guards, that sort of stuff. They range from anywhere between £6 and upwards, really. You can get like an actual sort of guard system that runs through your bike, or you can even make your own with certain materials and things like that. So that's always worth looking at as well, just to kind of keep you covered, especially if you're riding to work and it's muddy, it's cold, and it's wet, and you don't want to get to work all like filthy dirty. So that's something to look at as well. And so for just going back to materials as well, I know a lot of materials tend to say that they'll do things, this, that, the other. If you're looking at stuff that is a good base layer, merino wool is a fantastic option to go for. Merino wool is the best option that you have for a base layer other than synthetics. The reasons why I say that is because if you are vegan and you do not want to use or if you just don't want to use animal products, that's 100% fine, and I admire you for taking that sort of, how would you say, like, I admire you for being able to take that sort of like change from using animal products, which, to be fair, animal products, they do work incredibly well versus some synthetic options. But again, that's a personal choice, and I commend you for not wanting to use animal products. If you are in the market for animal products and you're quite happy to use that, merino, like I say, that is a fantastic option. There are synthetic options out there, like a synthetic style of merino, but they are slightly harder. Well, they are in an abundance, but they are slightly harder to come by for ones that they are slightly harder than for ones to come by than ones that for ones that really work. The options are slightly endless, but make sure that you are looking at certain materials and what they contain. If something says it is, like, say for example, if something says it's merino wool layers, just check the percentages on there, because they do tend to differ. So you'll have so much percent nylon, so much percentage merino wool, etc. So just make sure, because you do get different options within that as well. Going back to just things like clothing, socks are a good option for the winter season. It'll keep you nice and dry and also toasty. I know I mentioned it with sealskins before, but make sure that you have a good set of socks, because if your shoes get cold and a little bit damp, that will in turn move in towards your socks, and your socks are the last barrier that you have before you get cold feet, and it takes a long time for your feet to get warm again, and it's virtually impossible if you've got cold, wet, damp shoes, which you probably will do. Having a really good set of socks, things like waterproof socks, may be a good option for you for the winter period as well. Another thing as well, like just going back to like electrolyte stuff, like High Five produced some zero caffeine electrolyte drink tablets. I've used the High Five stuff before, and I really, really rate it. I think it's really, really good stuff. I've had no problems with it. It's got a good amount of electrolytes in it, so that you feel that you're drinking, or you're able to kind of replenish that sort of need for when you're on those slightly longer rides, or even if you're on a shorter ride. I'd always recommend drinking about a litre of water in the morning, so I tend to do that. And then if you need to have that caffeine hit, or like a zero caffeine hit, like they do different options to have for electrolytes. So that's another option for you as well for on those longer rides. It's something to keep in mind. Also, if you have a look at some of my videos, I've done some the Northern Bites. I'm going to be doing a few more of them eventually, but they're like just little snacks that you can make yourself and take on the road with you as well. It's always nice. And so green oil, or muck off oil, or anything like that, like there's lots of different brands out there. I know I touched on this before, but there's lots of different brands out there for oils and things like this. Just have a look to see what other people are using during the winter seasons, because you'll find that often people do change it. So I've been using the Thin Super from Interflon UK, or Interflon, the company itself, and it's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm really excited to use it in the winter months. So I'm going to be doing some little tests during the winter as well, so I'm really, really excited for this. So going back over just a few other bits to cover, just to kind of reiterate exactly what you should be wearing during the winter sort of months. There's nothing wrong with being a fair weather cyclist, and the attraction is pretty damn obvious. Pedaling in the sun, it's great, and I love it. Don't get us wrong, I love wearing my shorts and just getting out there and hitting trails and sweating, and yeah, it's great. But like, obviously with the winter period coming like sharpish, just make sure that you've got a list of things that you need. Like, rotate your summer stuff to your winter stuff, get it ready so that you can enjoy things really, really, really easily. So no matter if you ride road bikes or if you ride mountain bikes, like downhill, trail, enduro, it doesn't matter what you ride. I mean, always start with your base layers. That's the best place to start with. You can buy base layer underwear as well, so if you really want to go for that, then you could you could kind of go for that and then wear like little bits on top of that. That's another option. And bib shorts or tights. So this can sometimes be overstated. I wear bib shorts sometimes. Now, I know that sounds daft because I'm not a road cyclist at all, but I find that they tend to be better than some of the padded shorts that I've had on before in the past. They hold everything up and they don't fall down, they don't move around, and they're incredibly comfortable. And I also am able to kind of have a little bit more of a layering on there as well. They tend to have a little bit more material on them, so they keep you a little bit warmer as well. Cycling jersey, again, it's like the final garment that goes on top. These are something that you want to have a look at. Again, have a look into like other like outdoor brands as well. They may be able to give you something else that you're looking for, which is always good. Arm and leg warmers. Now, I've never worn these before, so this comes as like a new thing for me, so I'm not really going to give any sort of advice, so to speak, with this, or any sort of opinion on it. But they do look they do look like they do keep you warm, especially if you kind of wanting to kind of free the arms up a little bit. It's an easier option than basically having a jacket, I would imagine. So you can just pull your arm layers off, roll them up, put them into your bag or however you carry things like that. So that might be worth looking at as well. If you have any road bike friends, ask them, see what they think of them, because I think the majority of them will not be mountain bikers. Gilets are absolutely fantastic. I've always worn them. I absolutely adore gilets. They're great just to wear around the house or like whatever. Like, but cycling specific ones are really good as well. You can get pockets in the back of them, along with cycling jerseys. But gilets are just that little extra bit that's going to keep your core temperature raised a little bit as well. So that's always something to look at. And if you like want to kind of complete that, I'd imagine arm warmers could kind of keep that there, and it gives you an option to kind of strip down without having to take things off, and it just keeps you still layered, but not having to take a jacket off, then a t-shirt off to remove something else, etc., etc. So it's still kind of that sort of versatility that you've got. Soft shell jackets are absolutely fantastic. I love these things. They are of a nice, really soft, sort of like fleece-like material that's kind of like almost like shiny and sort of. It's like a very smooth sort of finish. You'll have worn a soft gel jacket before. If you haven't, I would highly recommend investing in them. They are absolutely fantastic at keeping you warm. They're really good, and they also can come in various different high visibility sort of structures. So they have like a very almost like silvery white kind of color that reflects as soon as any light hits it, and it's really good and it's really visible as well. So that's worth looking at. Waterproof jackets are an absolute godsend, especially when it's raining. So I like to go for a shell than an actual jacket, because sometimes the jackets are a little bit too thick, and they're the thing that's keeping you warm and waterproof as well. And if you overheat and you want to take that off, that takes away your waterproof and your warmth as well. So going for options, as I said before, layering. So if you have a gilet and you have a shell jacket over the top of that, that's your waterproof layer, and it's not raining, you can take that off, fold it up nice and small. It's a really good option for you. Stop getting cold hands and feet. Now, overshoes are a thing. I know a lot of people who ride them to work, and that is something that I can't overstress enough. Like, cold hands and feet affect the rest of your bodies. If you keep your extremities warm, then the rest will be okay. Your legs, your arms, etc., and your core temperature. If your core temperature is warm and your hands are cold, then the rest will get cold as well. It won't be enough. You need to be able to keep your extremities nice and toasty. So doing things like silicone, or if you have nylons, or you can have different materials which are really good at just insulating that cold, and also being able to keep you warm and happy as well. Hats or skull caps. You can get neoprene skull caps, you can get woolly hats, you can get really thin beanies, things like that. Again, it's an extremity, but you want to be able to make sure that you get something that's thin enough that it doesn't affect the helmet. It doesn't affect how your helmet's going to balance on your head. It's not going to move it in other awkward positions or anything like that. So that's something to keep an eye on. Neck warmer, again, another part of your extremities. A good neck warmer, or a snood, or like a buff, bandanas, anything like that. These are something that are highly recommended. It's nice to cover the face, especially if it's really, really cold. If you've got some nice sunglasses and it's like a nice frosty, cold, sunny afternoon or morning, if you have those slightly larger sunglasses or goggles, you can cover the rest of your face up as well, and that will give you an extra added bonus bit of warmth as well, because there's nothing worse than getting a really cold face or nose or something like that. So in conclusion, layering is the absolute best way to go. It's the only way, I find anyway. So basically, you want to start from the base and then work your way up. It's okay if you want to kind of go for like a very minimal sort of approach of having just little layers along the way, or if you want to have slightly bigger layers, like, it's entirely up to you. You know your own body and how it works and how it kind of deals with cold and heat, etc. So wrap up accordingly, and you will find that you will enjoy your rides a lot more in the winter season. I really hope that people can get interested in cycling in the winter. It is a different beast altogether, and you get to see the same landscapes that you've been riding all summer in its slightly different light as well. Especially if there's snow there, the landscape just looks beautiful. It's something really interesting. Also, don't forget as well that Christmas is coming up. I realise that it's not even November yet. Try, if you want people to know exactly what you want, have a look now to see what sort of things are kind of trending at the moment, and help people out by saying, like, this is something good or whatever. I might do a video on Christmas gifts to buy as well. That might be something on the tables. So thank you so much for listening, guys. I realise that this week it's just myself rambling on, and I realise that it's probably not been in the finest of orders. However, I like to keep things casual, and you know, if you've listened to my podcasts before. Now, tonight, well, obviously this is actually recorded on a Wednesday and it's going to get edited and released in an hour's time, so this is really short notice. I will be flying out down to Wales. I'll be flying down to Brighton and meeting my friend Cameron. We'll be riding Bike Park Wales and various other trails along the way, so I'm really excited for that, and I can't wait to show you guys the footage as well. I just want to thank everyone who's been commenting lately and been subscribing lately. It's kind of starting to build a bit more traction. I can't believe how wonderful you guys are. You guys have been the absolute best, and thank you to all previous people who have been on the podcast as well. You guys have been absolutely awesome. I've loved having everyone on. You guys, honestly, you've been the best, and it's fantastic to see the support that I'm still getting from this channel. Like, some people kind of go, oh yeah, it was cool, and that's it, forget about it. But you guys are still coming back time and time again, and it means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much to everyone, and don't forget, I'm the Northern Rider. Thanks for listening in, and I'll see you guys in the next one.